the West Coast, the East Coast, and deep in the heart of Texas. It's the Geek at Arms podcast with Brian, Mike, and James.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Geek at Arms podcast, a podcast camped squarely at the crossroads of geek culture and Christian faith. I'm James, and as always, my friends Mike and Brian are with me. Gentlemen, how wonderful is life today?
Life is so much better than the alternative.
Yes.
I cannot disagree.
I'm making a small joke, friends, because at the time of this recording, all three of us are fighting one type of illness or another. And as much as we tried to bring our computers and our microphones in on the bed or on the couch or the recliner or somewhere else infinitely more comfortable, it just wasn't working out. But we're here anyway, and we're going to soldier on.
You two are the best part of my illness.
Here, here.
Yeah, Hallmark doesn't have a card for that one.
Just give them time. They'll have a card and a movie, which will inexplicably be set during Christmas time. But let's head on to happier subjects than how bad we're feeling. And let's head to Geek Out. And I will kick things off, which I'm happy to say that my wife Joy and I have finally had the opportunity to get to a game that is we have wanted to for a long time. And several of our friends have played in the geeky community, and now it's finally our turn. We're finally able to dig our teeth into Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, yay.
Yes. Now, we had played the first two Baldur's Gate, which were, of course, couch co-op games back, I think, on the original Xbox. And we've been waiting for a third for, well, forever, because, like I said, the first two were on the original Xbox. And we love couch co-op games. And then when they announced that they were doing Baldur's Gate 3, it was going to be couch co-op, we were just ecstatic. And we decided to wait for a little bit because when it first came out, it was like $70. And it's like, we'll budget for this. And of course, the holiday seasons came, game sales were aplenty, and we were able to get a copy. And we have been loving it. Usually with many couch co-op games, we will let our kids watch as we play. We have to be very careful when and where we do that with this game.
Yeah, isn't there a romance option with the bear?
We're not going to talk about the bear. We're just not even going to bring the bear up. Okay, for the purposes of this recording, he's barely there, and
barely there.
And it's going to be a bare necessity that we not bring him up that much. But before I pun any more intentionally, because, don't make an intentional pun. Own your puns, you cowards. We decided to create our own characters. Joy made a elven cleric, and I made a human archer. And I know that sounds boring, but I love shooting archery, and I wanted to make an archer in the first two. But then I discovered how quickly you can get swarmed as an archer in the first two. And that made it no fun whatsoever. And also that you were limited by the number of actual arrows you carried. So, swords and axes it is. This one is turn-based. So I found myself able to create not an archer, but I made a ranger. Who I've got my bow. I've got animal companions. I can summon like a wolf or a bear, and we're having a grand time. Right now, we're still in the first act of the game. We're kind of exploring the Underdark, and we're in the middle of something called Shar's Temple. Those who have played the game will know exactly when and where we are, and we're just taking it a day at a time. Back when we played the first two, this was still very early in our marriage. No kids, and we could stay up late, playing these games, and it was an issue. We're not that young anymore, and now we have kids, which is a problem because we find ourselves still wanting to stay up late. And we'll just get through this last session. Oh, I'm so close to leveling up. Like, oh, let's just kill this bot. No, we have to constantly stop and tell ourselves we're not at that age anymore. We have kids, we have responsibilities, and why are we still playing? We're not listening to ourselves. Oh, the morning is going to come too soon. But fun game. Anyone who's played it for any length of time knows exactly how fun it is. So I'm glad that we're finally able to get into it.
So then the burning question in my mind is, how do you feel about Asterion so far?
That's a really good question. Indifferent. Mostly
Don't
for
sell
me.
it too hard, James.
Joey might have a different opinion, considering he's the sparkly vampire. Her character has spent the most time talking to him. And boy, when these characters make advances toward you, they really go all out. Let me say that. Here's a question, Brian. How do you feel about Asterion?
I hated him through most of the first act. And then at some point he turned a corner for me. And I just found I really enjoyed his banter.
Oh, he has good banter. I'll give him that. I really like most of the characters. I found myself getting really tired with the Githyanki, Lae'zel, however you pronounce
she's
her
kind
name.
of uphill.
She completely uphill. I'm like, I don't even want to go talk to her. And even then, when I'm ignoring her most of the time, once again, she comes on to me. I'm like, what is happening here? I think the weakest of the group is the one called Will, personality-wise, the blade of whatchamacallit or whatever, and then he ends up with demon horns. He's the one I find myself taking out of the camp as a follower the least and talking to the least. I don't know. Not with all the cast of characters that they give you as companions in the game, they're not all going to be winners. So there's going to be some that are weaker than others, personality and story-wise. So the ones we found ourselves using the most are Karlach, Gale, and Shadowheart.
See, I found myself almost completely ignoring Gale.
Gale also, we found can be pretty fun and with good banter. We also really appreciate his gigantic surplus of destructive spells. But once again, because he is like a wizard type, we keep them at the back because they are glass cannons. But that's okay. That's what we have Karlach for.
Okay, that's two things I'm going to have to write down for this for use in my own games. First is Blade of whatchamacallit with Demon Horn. And the next was whatever you just said about about just the assemblage of destructive spells. Like no description, just assemblage of destructive spells.
Yeah, I mean that's a wizard in a nutshell.
What's funny is the one time that I did take him out early in the game, I found that the most useful thing that he could do was put out fires. It's like, oh, I've got a 0 level spell I can cast forever. I'll use it to put out fires.
Was it the create water spell?
No, it was a Ray of Frost.
Oh, okay. Because we have used I don't even know how many times we've used create water to get rid of burning areas. But we also found it was really handy to use it a couple of times on the ground, draw the enemies in, and then use a lightning-based attack.
That's a good idea.
Oh, wow.
So far, my favorite combination is occasionally throughout the world, you'll find basically, I forget what the exact name is, but it's a barrel of gunpowder, and you can just throw it in your inventory. In the Temple of Shauron, we came across this necromancer named Balthazar. There was a whole quest we were supposed to do something for him, but after looking at him and talking to him for about 5 or 6 cutscenes, both Joey and I decided, no, you need to die. like right now. It was him, a giant creature that had no name. It was just called Flesh Monstrosity. I put the barrel between them. We got a decent distance, and I shot it with a fire arrow. And the resulting explosion made our jobs a lot easier.
There was a video I saw once of the goblin encampment that has a whole lot of those things. And somebody just found as many of them as they could and laid them out in such a way that they shot one fire arrow and blew up almost the entire dungeon just with this chain reaction of exploding barrels. It was beautiful.
I thought you said you hadn't read Dungeon Crawler, Carl.
Well, apparently whoever made that video did.
You're probably not wrong.
Leveling up through superior
or possibly
firepower.
whoever made that video wrote it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Whoever made the video is like, I could make a book out of this.
Matt Dinneman's playing Baldur's Gate 3, just making notes as he goes. But moving on from Baldur's Gate 3, just recently my family and I finished watching the latest offering from Lucasfilm and Disney, Star Wars Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, I have not had access to Disney Plus lately, so I've been really curious as to what that's like.
Well, is it the best Star Wars you're ever going to watch? No. Was it fun Star Wars? Yes, it was. Now, when I watched the trailers and I thought, oh, it's Star Wars, but with kids, I was very skeptical.
Yeah, the trailers are terrible.
Yeah, they were. They did not give me any confidence because that's one of my most hated tropes is let's take this property that you love and let's put some kids in it.
Yeah, Voyager did that.
That's such an 80s thing. But here's the thing. They really leaned in to the whole 80s thing in this series.
So there was a dog Jedi too?
Almost. But there was a wise old owl.
Like, I mean, all we need is Cubert, a Rubik's Cube, and laser tag to make an appearance. And then absolutely it's 80s cartoon.
The first thing I was thinking of, and I said this to Joy, was this is like Tales from the Loop in Star Wars.
Okay.
Where a group of kids, they're going to be in danger, but they're not going to die. Because you know for a fact, no matter what happens, they're not going to kill kids. But I found it some pretty decent storytelling. And the kids, there was one or two kids, which was getting close, was playing right at the line of being annoying and insufferable. But thankfully, they backed away from that. And there's even an episode or two which they went full Goonies. But you know what? That's not entirely a criticism. Because they know they were going full Goonies. They know you'd know that they were going full Goonies. You know that they'd know that you know that they were going full Goonies. We're a knowledgeable fan base. And yes, I just snuck in a Lion in Winter reference throughout all of that, and I'm okay with it.
Okay, so what is the premise of this show? Like, these kids get a ship and then...
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and then just like everything? Like one...
So these kids are on this planet
stem bolts,
called... Yeah, these kids are on the planet where everything is nice and orderly and neat. And even the look of the planet is Star Wars 1980s. These nice houses, landscaped yards, and suburban neighborhoods. The kids are in school. The parents work for a large business. And some of them are happy home lives. Others are obviously like latchkey kids. One's got an absent dad and no mom. You're making the 1980s. You're checking off the list. And they get around on what are basically the Star Wars equivalency of bikes, little hover bikes. One of them pulls up and it even makes like the quintessential bicycle bell sound, the ching ching. And 4 kids, like you said, they think that they found a Jedi temple. What it is a spaceship. And they find that out because one of the kids finds a glowing button. And so what happens when you're a kid and you find a glowing button?
You press the glowing button.
And that causes the ship to take off, take them away from their planet. And it's about them getting back to their home and the adventures, the misadventures, and the mystery of trying to get back to their planet. And
so they literally made
fun.
An entire season out of this concept that they ripped off pretty much wholeheartedly from Space Camp, a kid's 1980s film.
There's even a curmudgeonly droid.
Of course.
Oh my gosh, I was thinking about Space Camp just the other day. Anyway, but it was one that I could watch with my whole family. And I enjoyed it. Kids loved it. So, well done, Disney. I wouldn't even be angry if they made a season 2. I'd like to see what happens next.
Yeah, I do have Disney Plus, and I've seen the ads go out by for it and thought, that looks really awful. And so I haven't given it much thought beyond that.
I mean, something can be awful on paper, but a lot of fun in execution. So if I ever decide that there's an absolute must-see thing on Disney Plus, I'll, get it for the month and put that on the list.
at one point I was thinking, so this is what it would be like if someone like John Hughes or Rob Reiner made a Star Wars movie.
Rob Reiner did make a Star Wars movie.
I don't know about you guys, but I already love this episode.
I don't remember there being many lightsabers in When Harry Met Sally.
That film could have been greatly improved with a few.
I'm thinking of somebody else, aren't I?
I
Not
think
Rob
you
Reiner.
are.
Yeah, we're all now Googling who are the Star Wars directors, aren't we?
Ron Howard is who. I
Ron
was
Howard,
thinking
yeah.
That's who I was thinking.
I'm still
of.
keeping this in because
Okay.
that's fantastic.
Okay.
of. I would love to blame the fever, but I suspect I would have made the same mistake even without it.
But that is going to wrap up my Geek Out. Mike, what have you been geeking out to recently?
Well, let's just stick with the Star Wars theme for just a minute. For the first time in a very long time, I am hopping into the GM seat for a campaign. So I've done little stints of like one-offs, but this is the first campaign in a long time. And since I'm running a campaign, there is probably an 80% chance that it's going to be the Star Wars D6 second edition, which it is. So this time around, we've done our session 0. We're going to be doing probably a shorter campaign, like 8 to 12 adventures. So it's going to be more like a season more than it is anything else. And I decided to do something a little bit different with my session 0, and we had a lot of fun with it. When we had done all of our character creation, I decided to let them help build the environment. I mean, I've really been inspired by a lot of the communicative storytelling drives that are kind of baked into a lot of contemporary RPGs, say like Dungeon World, where you all sit together and kind of build the map out together. This time around, I decided that I would let each person have like a contact that they knew in the sector that they're going to be working in. So it's an entirely made up sector. You're not going to find it on Wikipedia. They're New Republic intelligence operatives investigating this, that, and the other. And so I said, you know, one person in this sector. And so I laid out a series of 3x5 cards. On some of them were things like a profession, like arms dealer or junk dealer or salvage captain, or just various things that said something about the person. One of them was former Imperial. In a second set of 3x5 cards, I had some sort of disposition about the person, like who can't let go of the war, or who is trying to forget, or trying to make a buck, or struggling to get by. And then in the third category, I had something about a disposition towards the character, like owes you a favor, or knows your secret, or holds a grudge against you, or is an old fling. And so I let people just kind of look at the cards and kind of work out how they wanted to assemble their own character that they knew. And so they're just little seeds where they could invent a little bit of backstory with them and also invent a little backstory of a person that's in the sector. And one of my favorites was somebody actually picked up, this person has a grudge against me. And it was the salvager who holds a grudge. And what they had done is decided that they were working with somebody and they gave them a tip on good salvage. And once they got there, it was actually some sort of Imperial sting operation. And so the person wound up in a whole mess of trouble based on this guy's tip. And so they're writing dynamic backstories, which are compelling and interesting and complicated. And so it was just a lot of fun to see what they did with it.
I did something similar to that with the Traveler campaign I ran relatively recently, and wound up with a Vargur poet, the Vargur kind of they're uplifted wolves, who was writing lyrics for his interstellar rock star. And that was a lot of fun just to have this. You don't really think about that. You just got the space opera and you've got, oh, well, here we've got this entertainer, this rock star who's going to be weaving in and out of the story occasionally. It's not at all what I expected to see.
Yeah, it's exactly this sort of, I didn't expect to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of the more interesting things was somebody wanted to play one of those KX Enforcer droids that we saw in Rogue One, liberated Imperial property that's reprogrammed. And he chose a former Imperial trying to forget who knows your secret. And so the idea that he was kind of struggling with is like, well, I'm just a droid. What, I don't have like this troublesome backstory, until we just started talking about like, well, it doesn't mean a secret that you're trying to hide. And he's like, wait a minute, what if there's something that I don't know about myself? What's it, something deep in my programming, or maybe something hidden in my chassis? And so we started just kind of brainstorming and going back and forth from there, and watching people just get interesting, dynamic ideas just from these little seeds is really, it's just really satisfying to see which way the characters run with, or the players run with their characters.
Especially since good players will always punish themselves way more than the GM can.
Absolutely.
Total truth.
Absolutely. Oh, I will never forget the time that I had with the MinMax crew when we did Earth's Prettiest Human. And they failed so often. And they were so invested in their own failures that it was just an incredible sight to see of how vicious someone will be with themselves when they have ownership of it.
I can remember my daughter and I were driving to an SCA event, listening to that episode, and both of us laughing so hard.
It was, again, I will give so much credit to having a good crew of people to work with, because just the reveling in failure was just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But tangentially RPG related, I would say probably RPG lit more. I decided to pick up Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Excellent.
Yeah, you had mentioned it, and then I just kind of tucked that into the back of my head. And then I saw that a lot of people in the MinMax channel who were kind of in our similar Christian geekosphere, like Derek the Geek Preacher White was talking about it. Gregory Oswald was talking about it, with just so many other people really seeming to enjoy it. I decided to pick it up. I will say that I think that the book is dangerous. I'd be careful, because I darn near could have just missed my stops on the train if I wasn't paying attention, because it's easy to just get sucked into and just keep on reading.
Yeah, I think there are 6 books out right now, and that is the fastest I have ever blown through a series. I mean, it wasn't like a matter of a few months. It was like a few weeks.
That I believe. I mean, I don't read nearly as quickly as you, James, but I went right through that. Now, I will say, if you're looking for fine, challenging literature, this is probably not your pick. Yeah, this is. I mean, if you want to read this critically and skeptically, it's derivative. It's it really leans heavily on Douglas Adams, I would say, at least in terms of structure. Like, you have a large intergalactic corporation who basically destroys the Earth's population, minus like 10 million, based on a technicality, and now they're going to reap the profit. Like, okay, I've seen that in the first chapter of Hitchhiker's Guide, and it really seems like the individual who wrote this loves like Ready Player One and a number of other books that rely first and foremost on your sense of nostalgia and or your sense of understanding of how MMOs work and RPGs in general work, because that's just the interface with the world. It assumes that you are an MMO player, or at least know how it works, in order for anything to make sense. It's not complicated writing, and it's just a page turner. So if you want to read this critically, there, I've done it for you. You don't have to. If you're interested in just a good, hilarious page turner, this is absolutely it, because it is just hysterical. Like, I have had to stifle laughter not successfully while other people are trying to watch TV. And it was just an enjoyable read. I don't know that I'm going to pick up the others immediately, but just the irreverent take of the everyman. I would say that he does not start heroic, but he kind of does more and more heroic things, at least in terms of his regard for fellow human beings that are stuck in the dungeon crawl, and also his developing sense of empathy for the mobs that we're assuming that the dungeon just generates the mobs. They're not really, they're not really sapient entities, until he's like, if I start interacting with them more, they seem to act like sapient entities. Should I be having moral problems with killing these things that are trying to kill me? That it's an interesting viewpoint character, and his relationship with Princess Donut, his ex-girlfriend's cat, is really something else. Like they, by the way, Brian, they start the save the cat moment early, like chapter 1. Like it starts with saving the cat, literally. Yeah. So,
well, I'm sure in another month that'll be my geek out.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the last episode we did. This is Mike, and next time it's yours.
Although I'm fairly sure also that next month my entire geek out is going to be Civilization 7. So there's that.
So note to Mike, we might be doing a couple episodes by ourselves. Brian's going to be way too busy.
Just one more turn. Just one more.
And for the last item on my geek out, I've been playing The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Have either of you played this?
I have not even heard of it.
Neither have I. Well, I think Joy mentioned it because she's pretty up on the Zelda games, but I have not played it.
Oh my gosh. Yes, this is a thing. Like, it did not make as big of a splash as the last two Zelda titles. It's based on the same engine of the remake of Link's Awakening. So everything has kind of a little bit of a chibi look to it. And the big thing about this that made the biggest splash is that you're not playing as Link. Like, when it says The Legend of Zelda, you are playing as Zelda as the protagonist. And
it only took them how many years?
I mean, I'm not counting. The thing that they came up with was they didn't want to do a Legend of Zelda title with Zelda running around with a sword and shield, because why not just use Link to do that? They wanted it to be something distinctive, and it is distinctive. Zelda has a magic wand that can basically produce copies of things that she encounters. So if you run into a rock, you can copy a rock. If you find a table, you can copy a table. If you walk up to a ledge and you produce a rock off the edge of that ledge and it happens to land on a mob, well, now you go collect the echo of that defeated mob. And now that mob can fight for you when you summon it. So it's not that it's a non-combat game, because there is combat. Just by and large, you're not the one doing the fighting. You're the one orchestrating. Now, you can produce an echo of the warrior, of the swordsman. Basically, you can turn yourself into Link momentarily, but that is a metered resource. So you run out of power to use the sword and shield if you want to try to might your way through this. But most of the problems and most of the enemies you can encounter are solved just by being really, really clever. So it's really kind of funny. I never would have thought that the most useful item in a Legend of Zelda game would be a bed, because you can stack a bed on a bed on a bed and a bed and make a staircase and climb on top of trees and just go over this wall that Link would never have an opportunity to go over, and he would walk around. So it is a really interesting game that kind of stretches your ways of solving puzzles. It's never seemingly about what is the intended solution, but about how did you find a way to solve this problem. And sometimes Kaja and I are solving them in very different ways. And I hear that it has a lot of replay value just because you can play the game differently another time. So
I like that they have embraced this notion that they don't have to prescribe the solutions for everything.
And it's really kind of amazing because that could create a game that doesn't feel like The Legend of Zelda, if you know what I mean. Like, it's usually you're looking for the intended solution, but somehow they've created this game where there's a problem, you can come up with a solution, but it still feels very much like a Zelda game, and it still feels like a very Zelda-ish problem. And I don't quite know how to describe that. Like there are some ways that you've been playing these games for 30 years. So you know when, okay, there are 3 rocks that are assembled in this way. There's a secret that's here. I just don't know what it is. How do I figure out the way to find what they've hidden? And sometimes, do they actually just hide anything, or have I been playing with rocks for the last half hour? It doesn't matter. I've been having fun playing with my rocks, and you can't tell me what to do.
I have dropped a bomb on every single square in this screen.
Getting Zelda produce bombs is actually a little bit of a challenge, but that's still a thing. Like, she does. But yeah, getting control of those echoes is actually kind of interesting. But yeah, I highly recommend. I've had a lot of fun with it. I'm interested to see what direction they could possibly go with this.
Cool.
And that'll wrap it up for my Geek Out.
Well, I guess that turns it over to me. I presume that you've both seen my notes and are wondering why I'm going to a Los Angeles dentistry convention.
I did not know that that's what the LADDS is. I imagine that given recent events, they would have rescheduled.
I dress up in medieval clothing and go to tournaments, so I'm not in a position to judge anyone's hobbies.
Yeah, no, I do too many weird things.
LADDS is the Los Angeles Dice and Developers Society. Back in October or so, I saw a flyer stapled to a telephone pole advertising this group that's a group of game developers that play D&D. It's like, you know what? I need social connection. I have not had any lately. And so out of character, I decided to just go ahead and enlist in this this random group of D&D players. I'm not exactly in the game developer sphere. I'm kind of adjacent to it, but they don't seem to mind. I have not yet actually been able to go to a session because I was going to say, okay, I'm going to sign up for this thing in the new year and then start going to games. And then somebody decided to burn the state down. So I haven't had the opportunity to actually go, but I have made a character. And they're doing, cool. Are you familiar with the West Marches style of gaming?
I am not. Do tell.
Neither am I.
Okay, so this came from a formal gaming arrangement at some point. I don't know who did it or when or where, but they had a large group of players that all wanted to play. And so rather than, splitting it out into several, distinct groups of people that are all playing together all the time, they said, okay, we're just going to have a map with a lot of points of interest and some quests associated with those points of interest. And whoever wants to go investigate a quest can gather a party, talk to a GM. And so it's a player-driven scheduling where you say, okay, well, I'm interested in going to the Southern Dryads quest. Does anybody want to go with me? And if you get 3 or 4 people willing to go with you, then you say, okay, now we need a game master. And you set up a place and a time and you have your adventure. And it could be with a completely different group every time. And as you complete quests and so forth, things will unlock for the entire questing community. Like this group just recently unlocked the Oracle class because they went on this quest and found a seer. And so now people can make Oracle characters.
That is so cool.
Before they were limited to just the base classes. Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. And I'd like to see how it works. They're using the Shadow Dark system, which is an OSR, yet another OSR D&D clone. Which is not really my bag, but if it's all that's available, it's what I'm going to play because I would rather play something that I don't love than not play at all.
Right.
So we'll see how it goes. And we'll see if I can make sense of my randomly rolled background. I've got a thief who is a devotee of the goddess of lies, who's a chaotic deity, but the random alignment that I rolled is neutral. And my background, again, randomly rolled, is Mage's Apprentice. So I'm not sure how a Mage's Apprentice turns into a thief, So we'll see.
They would not teach me the spell that was in that scroll, and so I decided to seize it for myself.
Oh, wait, you were discussing this character on the Geeks at Play Discord.
I was. And I didn't write this down because I just thought of it while we were in our intro. But I did see the War of the Rohirrim. And based on previous conversations, I'm sure there might be people that are interested in my impressions of the War of the Rohirrim.
Like me.
It did not make me angry.
That's high praise.
It hewed. Yeah, well, it wasn't. It was an extremely okay movie. It's like it didn't really do anything fantastic, but it also didn't violate what I knew about the world. I think actually, and this is going to be kind of ironic for me saying this, they actually maybe hewed a little bit too closely to the canon. It was like
wild.
We know all of these things happen during this particular conflict, and so we're going to make sure that all of these things make it into the movie. It's like, and some of them were not strictly necessary.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And there were a couple of places where I don't know. I need to actually read the appendices and read what Tolkien actually wrote about the Haradrim and the Easterlings, because for some reason in the movies and the TV shows, everybody's got this notion that the Easterlings have the Oliphants, the giant elephants. I'm pretty sure those are supposed to have come with the Southrons, but they keep showing up in association with Easterlings, and so that has been making me confused. But it's a minor quibble.
Because giant elephants, that's why. That's why they...
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the opportunity to use giant elephants, use giant elephants. But at least you could say they came from the south instead of the east.
Yep. So
how they got them all the way across Gondor without anybody saying, hey, you don't belong here, I don't know.
I mean...
Well, Denethor's asleep at the wheel.
Hannibal might have had the same problem, like, hey...
Well, except Hannibal went around Gondor.
Well,
Came
that's fair.
north.
I mean, yeah, but still, those mountains were a problem.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
So...
Which is why he had 80% attrition on his elephants.
So I took my daughter to go see it, and she loved it. She thought it was the best thing ever. I was happy that she really enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. It was fine.
It's fine.
Which upset me in its fineness, because what I truly saw was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Like you said, Brian, they got the story points right about Helm Hammerhand, why they had to go to what then would be called Helm's Deep, the Winter Storm, Helm going out and punching bad guys to death. And I like that they did create a female figure, a female antagonist in the form of his daughter. It just, when it comes to the story, when it comes to the character development, the animation, especially the animation, it's like they got to good enough and then just stopped.
Well, I understand that a lot of that was because they were under an extremely tight deadline because they needed to make another feature film in order to retain the license. And so like, we just got to push it out. We've got to get it done. And we don't have time to do the finessing that a film like this usually needs. And so it was a lot of, we're just going to animate straightforward and we're not going to do the proper breakdowns. And so everybody is moving a little bit too much because like, okay, we're just going to draw based on our reference, and our reference is real people who have all these extraneous motions, which you want to remove from the stylized animation. You don't want people to actually move the way people move, because you wind up with something that looks jarring to watch, especially when it's at such a low frame rate as they had in several places in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of movies in the Lord of the Rings oeuvre, I would place this above Bakshi, Lord of the Rings, but below anything that is above that, if that makes sense.
So The Hobbit and the Fellowship trilogy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
maybe
I'd
not
seen the trailer.
The fan cut of The Hobbit.
There you go. The fan cut of The Hobbit. I'll agree with that.
See, I had seen the trailer and I had seen the animation, and I absolutely adore animation. but I didn't see anything in there that really made the style pop. And I was asking myself, is this a story that needs to be told? And is it one that I feel like I need to immerse myself in? And the answer to that was just kind of no. Like, maybe I'll watch it when
Yeah.
it streams for cheaper, because I don't see a story that is begging to be told in this.
Fair.
I think that is a very valid way to look at it. And I probably wouldn't have seen it if it weren't for, I have a tradition of going with my dad to a movie when I go home for Christmas, and there was nothing showing. It's like, wow, this is a barren day for movies. So let's go see War of the Rohirrim.
So we were also in Kansas at the time. I needed to keep my kids out of my wife's hair for a while. I took them to go see the new Sonic 3, which I never thought that I would be saying the sentence, I think Sonic 3 was better than the latest Lord of the Rings movie.
Wow.
3 things that I actually really liked about the War of the Rohirrim. 1, the music. That Rohirrim theme, which was prevalent throughout it, is one of my favorite throughout all of the soundtracks of the Lord of the Rings movies. Second, they included a scene which had some orcs going through soldiers' pockets. They were gathering and looting the dead to find rings. Orders from up high. Find any rings and bring them back. And as I was listening to the orcs talk, I'm like, that sounds really, really, I know those voices. I was very happy to find out that they were played by Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd. I'm like, oh, that's, I like that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that made me happy. And finally, last thing, which I was overjoyed about, and I sent you guys a picture on the Facebook page or the Facebook Messenger. They gave us the best popcorn bucket of all time. They thought, let's make a popcorn bucket in the shape of Helm Hammerhand's hammer.
I forewent the popcorn bucket.
Oh, I went all in on the popcorn bucket.
But I would not have been able to fit it in my luggage to bring home, so.
Fair. Is it going to hold a lot of popcorn? No, James doesn't care. You're going to make a popcorn bucket that turns into a giant hammer. I'm going to own that popcorn bucket. Sorry, I kind of went in heavy on your geek out. My apologies.
That's quite all right. I don't have a lot of energy to say things, so that works out. And I think that concludes my geek out, in fact.
Well, that will take us to our film club, where we are wrapping up our great adaptation series. And in this episode, we are looking at The Princess Bride, a movie that all 3 of us have been waiting for an opportunity to review. We could have included it on several other film clubs we've done, but it made sense to do it in this one, and I'm almost surprised it's taken us this long. So one question that we always ask is, why this movie? And to which I can reply, well, there's a shortage of perfect movies in this world. It would be a pity to not review this one.
James, you've, I think, hit on something that I think really makes this film hard to review. And it's not that it is absolutely perfect in its film craft, but the fact that there is so much in this movie that is such good, quotable fun that it makes it difficult to review analytically and review critically, because I kind of don't want to critically examine this movie. I just want to have fun with it, and especially with people who've not seen it before, or trade quotes back and forth with people who do understand the reference, or make memes out of this thing because it is so much fun. And it is such an incredible cult classic.
There's no need to analyze it deeply. There's no need to dissect it. You just watch it. You just enjoy it.
So you're saying our review should just be reciting the movie?
I think that there is no better tribute to this film that we can give by I'll play the role of the grandfather who wants to be Fred Savage, and then the third of you can just do all the rest of the other characters.
Well, I feel
But-
really in character for Fred Savage at the moment.
I'm picturing Mike busting into Brian's bedroom, hey, and just pinches your cheeks, much to your
It's like-
chagrin.
I hate that.
I cannot imagine a scenario where Brian would enjoy me touching his face.
If there's a
It's a-
spider on my forehead.
Okay, noted. But yeah, this is such an incredible film. This is a fun cult classic. It's funny, it's quirky, it's quotable, and I'll say it. I think that this thing works better as the movie than it did as a book.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's been a
have
long
either
time
of you-
since I read the book.
Yeah, and James, you've read this before,
Yes.
right?
It's been several years, but yes, I read it a long time ago. It was a moment where I was walking through Barnes and Noble, and I happened to look on a suggested reads, or it might have even been a table of books that had been adapted into movies, and I saw The Princess Bride. I'm like, really?
I could
I
only
think-
find the Good Bits version.
That is do you know what? It's an interesting thing that it's a common problem in people looking for an audiobook, looking for an unabridged version of the audiobook, because they have an abridged audiobook, and people are like, well, no, it's obviously abridged because the joke of the book is that the book is an abridgment of the real Princess Bride, which doesn't really exist, and so you're never going to find an unabridged version, when in fact all it is just 2 hours of the director reading his favorite bits out of the book. And so it really is the abridgment of the fictional abridgment. But yeah, so that's I don't know that we're ever going to have an unabridged version, but yeah, one way or the other. One of the things that I think makes this a great adaptation is in part the understanding of the source material, and that is due in large part because the screenwriter was also the author of the book. So you can't get any more knowledgeable of the source material than that.
And
They
he was
also-
a screenwriter first.
Right.
I've seen a couple other examples of, the screenwriter was also the author, but they were a novelist first, which doesn't always work out because novelists don't always know what makes a good screenplay.
But this screenwriter apparently could make a good enough and catchy enough novel, and used his film writer craft to excellently adapt the book. It
Mhm.
cut and it changed all the right things to make it work the way it did as a film. I think that an author who loved their book too much would have seen it a travesty that you cut the source of what makes the book what it is. So the idea of the book was that the Princess Bride is actually basically Les Miserables of Florin, and in the fiction, Florin is a real country from whom the author's father had originally immigrated. And so all he'd heard of the Princess Bride when he was sick was his father skipping through the book and essentially leaving out the Waterloo section, or leaving out all of the social commentary. And so the joke is that he's abridging the Princess Bride as a gift to give to his son. And once you cut out all of that complicated thing, it makes it an easily tellable story as the fantasy. But if there was an author that was too much in love with the thing that makes the book the joke that it is, it would have been a disaster on screen, because it would have been 45 minutes of setup to deliver a tee-hee of a joke. So while the events in the fantasy are very much the same, the tone and the perspective of the movie is far better suited for the medium. The movie is a love story that is about true love. The book provides a cynical presentation of couples and more or less insists that true love doesn't exist. Maybe Wesley and Buttercup are the exception, or maybe in 10 years they're going to be a bickery mess at each other.
Well, I guess we'll find out if he ever writes Buttercup's baby.
He died, so he won't.
No.
He tried a few times, but it never seemed to work. So, I mean, I think that's fair. Don't force a sequel.
Yeah, you talk about how the movie alludes to how life isn't fair. The book alludes to how life isn't fair, and no one ever really gets a happy ending. And the movie includes that idea as well. You know, after Buttercup's supposed marriage to Humperdinck, Fred Savage has a meltdown, and the grandpa reminds him, and I really enjoy this line. It says, "Who says life's fair? Where is that written down?" And then you find out that it was actually Buttercup's dream. Fred Savage is like, "I told you." And once again, another great line.
Smart. Shut up.
Yes, you're very smart. Shut up. Which I am not going to confirm or deny. I've said that to my own children and or wife.
I usually exclude the shut up part. But yeah, that's the thing. The line in the book is life isn't fair. It's just fairer than death. And I love the fact that they actually have the inclusion in the book or in the movie. But yeah, I don't think the book's tone would have worked if you tried to make that a movie.
No, I'm sorry, but that line of life isn't fair, just fair in death, that sounds like a Terry Pratchett line.
It really does. So yeah, the book fundamentally tries to do something very different, as it's skipping over all of the commentary and just providing the framework of the fantasy fairy tale, and taking that essential story of the fantasy fairy tale and turning that into a movie was just such a good call, and just leave the barest hints that it's a relative reading it to somebody else. And there's also a lot of humor in the book that did not age well in 2025. And I think that the movie was wise for either deliberately or unintentionally cutting it out. So I think that makes the movie survive a lot better. And maybe one of the reasons why they're not turning all of it into an audiobook these days.
Oh, shall we get into the film craft?
I
think
as well.
Yeah, Brian, why don't you tell us all about these effects? Okay, no, seriously, Brian, James, I think you want to talk about the duel.
I mean, it is the duel. I've talked a lot about rapier fighting in the SCA, and this is a fight that every single one of us has seen multiple times, and one that we wished we could do in a tournament or in some fashion, just like almost anything by Errol Flynn. This is the culmination of like the rapier dream. And
yeah,
I want to give special praise to Carrie Ooles and Mandy Patinkin for their hard work and dedication. Like,
they worked their butts off.
Now, here's the difference between actual fighting and like Hollywood fighting. They had this incredibly choreographed fight, and they did it, and they put their heart and soul into it. And they did a demonstration of it in front of the cast and everyone. And when they were finished fighting, everyone who was there applauded them, cheered them. The director, Rod Reiner, said, "Is that it?
That's it?
Is that it?" Because they did it beautifully. They did an incredible job, and it went like that.
Yeah.
It was that fast.
They had blocked a 7-minute scene, and it was the first scene that they rehearsed, and it was the last scene that they shot. So all during the production, anytime there's a break, those two are going through that scene. They wanted it to look crisp and clean and practiced, and they got it done so efficiently, and so, they got every bit of the physicality so exact that it ran too quickly for the time that was needed. So they had to go and introduce a bunch of stunts and backflips and everything to fill more time.
Fight, banter, backflip, more banter, slide, throw the sword up in the air. Stunt choreographer Peter Diamond will catch it and then drop it back to you. And they spent 6 months training for this fight. And I mentioned Peter Diamond, but both he and, of course, sword fighting legend Bob Anderson, had them learning to fight with both their right and their left hands, learning each other's choreography. And when they weren't on set actually shooting, they were off to the side sword fighting.
Yeah.
Training blades in hand, going through the movements.
So I would say that it's pretty uncontroversial to say that this is one of the best, if not the best movie sword fight, at the very least in the last 50 years. James has said a lot about the dedication of these people, just made it an incredible piece of cinema. I would say that while there are things that could have been better, you can see our notes on that. And even the notes on things that could have been better were pretty slim when we covered this in episode 32, Cinema Sword Fights.
Yeah. And one thing that I was always curious about when I was younger was during the beginning of the fight, they're sizing each other up. Inigo says, "You are using Benetti's defense against me." Naturally, I thought it given the rocky terrain, that means that your opponent has studied his Capoferro. Naturally, but I always found that Tybalt cancels out Capoferro, don't you? Unless your opponent has studied his Agrippa, which I have. Like, what is he talking about? Well, every one that they referenced are all 16th, 17th century sword fighting masters. We'll start at the top.
I mean, was Benetti really a master? I mean, George Silver had words to apply to him, and master was not one of them. I mean, Silver was kind of maybe a little biased.
Benetti may have gotten whacked over the head by an oar, but let's not dive too deep into that fight. So Rocco Benetti was, as Mike likes to put it, a supposed Italian fencing master who taught the use of the rapier in 16th century England, hence his issues with George Silver.
Oh, George Silver hated everybody who was Italian and or had a rapier, or most especially
like a deep hatred, like a unhealthy hatred. I mean,
he was fighting.
That's included in the very first paragraph of his treatise.
He wrote a treatise that basically says, "I'm fighting a culture war. Please, somebody else care."
Yes, pretty much. But after that, we have probably the most well-known of them all is Capoferro, an Italian fencing master best known for his treatise published in 1610. After that, we had Tybalt, Gerard Tybalt of Antwerp, the 16th, 17th century fencing master from Belgium. His manual is one of the most detailed and elaborate sources on rapier combat, painstakingly utilizing geometry and logic to defend his somewhat unorthodox style of swordsmanship.
When you say a detailed and elaborate, read listeners as Baroque and really, really challenging to read. Anyway, continue, James.
So, do you need a master's degree to read his treatise? No.
It doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. And finally, we have Camillo Agrippa, who was a noted fencing master, but he was also an architect, an engineer, a mathematician, truly a Renaissance man.
Yeah, the treatise, Agrippa's treatise, is unconventional, but I would say that it is worth the read for the translation by Ken Monshine for the introduction alone. So if you like early modern studies, pick up this book, read the introduction, even if you don't care about fencing. Anyway,
I've done enough rapier fighting in the SCA that I can usually recognize when someone is fighting a period style. I'll instantly recognize when someone is fighting Capoferro. He's the most used. His lessons, his plates translate the best to how we fight in society. Haven't come across that much Tybalt or Benetti. I will come across people who make a dedicated study of Agrippa, and they give me fits. The only other one is not mentioned here, but it would be Salvador Fabris. And that one I just have to get ready for the long haul because they're such defensive fighters. I know I'm going to hurt my back and still probably lose.
I hate to break this to you, James, but the list goes on even longer in the book as they banter on about all the swordsmen that they've studied. I'm not going to put the list here because this will be the Mike and James show talking about people of whom they may have read a third of their treatises, but we'll pretend that we have.
Yes.
Well, the only thing I have to offer is that Capoferro is an awesome name.
I mean,
the Captain of Steel.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong at all.
What's funny is that a later author tweaked his name just a little bit to mean iron-headed as a pun. So that was a serious dig.
Wonder what he thought of the man.
I don't know.
Well,
Anything else we want to say about the film craft? I mean, like, it seems like the most notable point of film craft is the sword fight, which we could go on for forever. But also check out episode 32 where we did.
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of special or not so special effects in this movie. Let's take a look. When they kidnap the princess, they're supposed to be sailing across an ocean to the land of Florin, but you can clearly see they're sitting in a boat in still water. Nothing is moving.
This is on set.
Yes. When I was a kid, the shrieking eels actually did scare me because you just heard the shrieking and you saw something in the water with a giant mouth of teeth. But I have my own issues with things in the water bigger than me. So that hit me on a psychological level. The two most, to me, I thought, impressive set pieces were obviously the cliffside where they had the duel and then the fire swamp. But all of these issues with how good things look or how cheap they look or whatever, the movie is so charming and earnest that we gladly overlook any and all inconsistencies. Like the ROUS, it is obviously a man in a giant rat costume. And we don't care that it's a man in a giant rat costume.
I wouldn't say that I don't care.
I knew you were going to say that. You would be the one who cared.
Well, the creature effects are pretty good. The facial articulation on the ROUS, I liked a lot. But it was really undercut by the waddling, awkward locomotion. I think they would have been well served to cut around those wide shots more instead of showing us the full body. Like, if you remember the wolf creature Gmork from the Neverending Story.
Oh, he was terrifying.
That was
I
great.
didn't know what he looked like.
He scared the heck out of me when I was a kid.
And all you see is he leaps out of the cave, and you see his body there, but it's in motion blur, and you get the idea. Okay, well, this is indeed a wolf, and then you see him dead. And they never show the entire creature, and they don't show him waddling around as a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
And so it was really effective as a monster. I don't think that you lost anything of the terror of him because Gmork was awfully terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, once again, a great example of sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm. The only other scene that I thought maybe should have been rethought was the Holocaust cloak thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Obvious puppet.
For most of the stunt work in this movie, you couldn't really tell that they replaced their actor with a stunty. But in this one, it was very, very obvious that there's a dummy on a cart. And they could have done some like forced perspective stuff, like have some fire in the foreground with Andre standing in the background with a very long lens, and only have just like the really wide shot with the dummy. They replaced him too early. It was like, we didn't need to see the obvious construction when it was looking over his shoulder. They could have done that much, much better.
They originally tried to have Andre in the cloak, and Mandy Patinkin, confident that he could push the wheelbarrow with Andre in it.
No.
The second he tried, instant hernias, like all up and down the body.
Wait a minute, he herniated all of his body? Like
the entire
we're talking
thing.
Toe hernia.
Actually,
shin bone hernia.
Said
glorious nose to toes.
Patinkin said that he only received one injury on the set of The Princess Bride. It wasn't during the sword fighting, and it wasn't pushing Fezzik on the cart. It was in Miracle Max's house. He broke a rib trying to hold in his laughter.
Well, considering it's Billy Crystal.
And Crystal did not have a script.
No.
Rob Reiner told him, this is what you're doing in this scene. Just vamp on it. And so they shot like for 2 days or something like that of just Billy Crystal improvising absolutely everything. And the sound people had to keep banishing people from the set. Rob Reiner himself was banished from the set because he could not stop laughing at Billy Crystal. Even for most of it, Cary Elwes isn't on the set either. He had to go away because he's lying there trying to be dead and just can't stop laughing. I mean, Patinkin is in the background just holding it in and hurt himself from it.
He also had Carol Kane with him, who's no slouch herself.
Oh,
so that makes me just love this movie even more.
It's like, if you have to banish the director.
I know, right?
And it makes me really impressed by the sound people because I obviously had to stay, and their entire job is to listen to the audio.
Yeah. I want to see what hit the cutting room floor.
I know. Wouldn't that be great just to have a reel of just Billy Crystal?
Yes. I want to see some of the footage too of I want to see the scene where Mandy actually breaks his rib from laughter. I want to hear that joke.
One other thing on the Filmcraft side, I think that they really did themselves a service by shooting a lot of it on location.
Yeah.
With a genuine castle, genuine locations, forests, instead of trying to do too much on sound stages. Because you can really tell when they are on a sound stage, like the sword fighting scenes, like, okay, look, a lot of paper mache rocks, a lot of really actual real rocks too. But you can tell the difference. You can sense it in the lighting and in the quality of the props and the set pieces. But when they're shooting on location, they get a lot of value from it.
Oh, yeah.
They've got one close-up shot where Mandy Patinkin leans up against a rock wall, and you can watch the rock wall shift under his weight. So how many views did it take me to actually notice that? Well, a lot, because it's easy enough to invest yourself in this fiction, and very few things take me out of that fiction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Holocaust
overall,
scene
though,
being one of them.
Yeah. Overall, I would say that the lack of effects really does work for this story. And it shows that good films can be made with modest budgets without relying on tons of post work.
Mm-hmm. I think that I would be very happy to see more movies like this where we're paying attention at the outset in our production design to just make certain that we don't need the post work, because it lowers the cost of the entire thing. And it would give us make film more accessible to more filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to train filmmakers to shoot like this, to stop and think, plan your shoot and then shoot your plan.
Anything else that we want to say about the filmmaking?
Well, I want to talk about the costuming just for a second.
Sure.
And that I really liked it. It's colorful, actually is appropriate for medieval periods, and they draw from many medieval periods all across the centuries. And while if it was any other movie, that would bother me to no end, this one I didn't care, because the costuming was part of the storytelling. They were meant to be evocative of a true fairy tale story, with each costume being a representation of a character's personality and social standing. You see Humperdinck, what a name. Always very immaculately dressed, fine cloth, very high standing, noble clothing, very
Same
bright colors.
Yeah.
And same with the Count. Even his hunting clothes, he's just completely coiffed and cut and perfectly put together. Then we get like Inigo, very simple clothing, more understated colors, but also very loose, very free flowing, as swordsman's clothes, but also one that isn't prospering very well. As he says, it's like there's not a lot of money in the revenge business. And of course, we get the mysterious figure of the Man in Black, the dangerous sword fighter who we find is the dread pirate Roberts. We find from him that masks are just terribly comfortable, and that in the future everyone will be wearing them.
It's funny, he just has black pants, black boots, a poofy black shirt, and a mask, and somehow that is just the distinctive costume for the Man in Black. Like, I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, it was perfect for him.
Just got a Zorro costume out of storage and omitted the cape.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, they did.
Yeah, totally. The costume I found most intriguing was Vicini's. Not because of its style or anything specific, just overall, it tells that this is a man who has a very high opinion of himself. Of course, you can have great costumes, but they're just going to be a waste if you don't have great characters who are delivering a fantastic script.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that is, it's one of those things that is kind of a struggle sometimes when we say, let's talk about the film craft and we want to talk about what's there visually. But really, one of the places where this thing just shines is that it all stands on a solid script.
Yeah.
It's the lines are funny, and I would say in 2/3 of the movie, we don't really have much in the way of zany, over-the-top comedy characters. Certainly Vizzini is over the top. Certainly Miracle Max is over the top, and the impressive clergyman, while his lines are like, while his demeanor is sincerity, what's coming out of his mouth is absolute silliness. And I think that the humor that they have in the script is the same way. It's presented matter of fact, but it's absurd. And they managed to just capture just the right tone to have this bizarre comedic chemistry that just works. They had a hard time selling this film in the marketing. Like the marketers didn't know what they have, because it's a comedic, romantic, actiony, fairy tale sort of story that's family friendly, but not a kid movie in the Disney sense. So it's genre bendy all over the place, but with just such a wonderful cocktail that it carries the rest of whatever shortcomings there might be in the presentation.
Yeah, I sure wouldn't know how to advertise this film.
No.
I've seen it literally dozens of times, but I still wouldn't be able to tell somebody what it is.
I think that usually when we try to tell somebody what this film is, we just say, oh my gosh, you've got to see this film.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Why haven't you seen this movie yet?
It's like trying to recommend Your Name to somebody. Like, well, what's it about?
Well,
can't really tell you.
It has to be
Won't watch
seen
it.
to believed.
Okay, so about Your Name, first thing you need to know is spoilers. Okay, I can't go anything past that. Now watch the film.
I just want to touch on for a moment the music of the film.
Yeah.
I've never watched a movie where they use the music to punctuate specific scenes so well. Whether it's Inigo taking a knife to the gut, Wesley and Physic looking at each other in confusion because they've just watched their friend run off after the bad guy. So many notes, so many, I don't want to call them sound effects, but so many just short musical cues that add to the scene and they use to punctuate it, prevalent throughout the entire thing. You don't even think about it. It just feels so natural. And I don't think I've ever seen a movie where they've done the same thing.
To that extent, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to listen to this soundtrack on cassette in the car, and because that's how old I was when I got it. And one of those things, I adored it then, and I tried to listen to the soundtrack again now separate to the film, and I found myself thinking, like, this is not a thing I want to sit and listen to, because it really is so much a matter of the moment of what's going on the screen.
Yeah, there's a line that you can't cross in film scoring where, well, you can, but it depends on the movie, where you don't want the music to be foregrounded too much, unless you're John Williams. But this was something that I was having a little bit of trouble with as I was trying to edit together some of the role-playing podcasts. It's like, do I want to do like a background track and do this incidental music? And I had a bear of a time finding something that would match the tone of what was happening in the action and yet not be too obtrusive and foregroundy. And so largely I just said, no, I'm not going to do a music bed for this because it's too much work.
Yeah.
And so a composer who's capable of doing that and making music that accentuates the film without overwhelming the film is really nice. And I don't particularly remember the music, but I know that it does a good job of supporting the movie.
Yeah.
Except for the love theme. That one stands out a lot because there's not a lot of dialogue going on at that point. And it's just
cue kissing music.
Right.
All right. Shall we talk about the characters?
Yes.
This is a film adaptation, so I do have some notes about how these characters are similar to or different from the book. And I think that this is one of the things that I think makes this a great adaptation, is that they did change characters. And the changes are all, I would say, correct for the film. Buttercup was really, really, really stupid. And
I seem to remember that she was really bratty, wasn't she?
She was bratty and a numbskull. Like, she just was not smart. Like, in the very end of the book, she has a moment. I mean, and it's kind of like, well, a broken clock is right twice a day kind of moments. I think that having Buttercup played up for looks and no brains would have gone horrible on screen. Now, she's not exactly a character that has a lot of agency. The time that she does do something, it's, I'll go back with you and I'll leave Wesley. That is her moment of choice. And pushing Wesley down the hill. Like, those are pretty much the two things that she does with any, effect. But still, they managed to present her far and away better than they did in the book. Like, you could kind of forget that she doesn't do a lot in the movie.
Well, she does give the prince an ultimatum. Force me to marry you, I'll be dead by morning.
Which, of course, was what he wanted anyway, so not really a great threat.
But she was unaware, though.
Wesley, he is more or less the same in the book and the movie, with the exception that he is, I would say, far kinder to Buttercup. And he, when he was masquerading as the Dread Pirate Roberts, he seemed to have a much meaner streak in the book. So I would say that this is just a better version of Wesley. We get to have the scene where he threatens to slap her in the face instead of where he actually slaps her in the face. So that's that's a far better way of presenting that you love somebody. Is
yeah,
slapping people is not, if somebody slaps you, they don't love you. Okay, they say they love you, they don't love you.
I'd like to really compliment Cary Elwes on his portrayal of Wesley.
Oh my gosh.
He spends half the movie in a mask. You can't really see his whole face. He doesn't have a lot of range in his in the character's emotional arc. Doesn't have a lot of range. He pretty much stays in the same place. But just the intensity of his gaze and his ability to just push his intent out through his eyes, I think, is really impressive.
Yeah. I was noticing that this time around, is that he doesn't seem to have the intensity that you get in the character is more his physicality. With somebody who is a brilliant actor. He's done a fabulous job in a number of roles. He was a far better Robin Hood the year that Robin Hoods were popular than the other guy.
This Robin Hood has an English accent.
So yeah, just his performance, I thought, really, really makes Wesley the endearing character that he is. And speaking of performances that are unlike any other in film, Andre the Giant as Fezzik, like, they actually got a literal giant to do the job. And now, he is not noted for his acting range. He is not known for his ability to memorize lines. He is not known to deliver them with a lot of exactness, but my gosh, is he ever Fezzik.
Yes. He understood the assignment, and he did it well.
That's my understanding, that when he got this role, he spoke very, very little English, and he memorized his lines phonetically. He didn't know the words themselves, just what they sounded like. Which, this is the first time I've ever watched it with the captions on. And it makes a lot more sense that he says he's fighting gangs for local charities rather than cherry thieves, which is what I always thought that he said. And that made no sense.
By this time in the when the movie was made, he was well established in the world of wrestling. But even those fans that don't know that he was actually Andre. His full name is Andre René Rosenbaum. He's French. He was born in a small farming community, and his English was just he had just enough to get him by in the world of the WWF and to travel. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that that's how he had to learn his lines.
But I want to get back to this idea of Fezzik fighting local charities, which, you know, Brian was, well, that makes so much more sense that he's fighting for local charities. Does it? Like, the fact that he's fighting gangs for charity?
It's
well,
it puts this Three Amigos thing in it. You know, you got your Seven Samurai story where that's his backstory is, oh my gosh, we're being extorted or strong-armed by this gang, and so we're going to hire a mercenary to protect us.
Well, what's funny is that they actually do unpack some of that backstory in the book, where he was a wrestler ever since he was a young boy, but as soon as he got big enough, people started to boo him whenever he won, so he had to take on more and more and more opponents in order for the crowds to feel like it's fair. Now, you know, fighting people for charity is another thing, but, you know, hey, however if you want to raise money by fighting people, then yeah, I don't have an end to that sentence. This is not a thing I'm doing to raise money.
Brian, you talked about giving credit to Cary Elwes for his ability to convey intensity and to carry the scene with his eyes. I want to give credit to Andre. The movie was shot just a few years actually before his death. He's always been this larger than life character, and in the wrestling ring he was just absurdly strong. In fact, in the documentary I watched about Andre, one of his fellow wrestlers would say that like nobody knew how strong Andre was. Andre didn't know how strong he was. Just to advertise the WWE, they had brought out a 1-ton weight, and Andre lifted it.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Yeah. In fact, another person said that one of the happiest days in Andre's life was when he figured out that he could move cars by himself.
Oh, yeah. Cary Elwes has had a few stories about that one.
Because then at like wrestling venues, he'd get there, he'd see someone's car who he recognized. He would then go pick up one end of it and move it around like a wheelbarrow and repark that person's car.
As a joke, yeah.
But all that to say, his condition, like the hormonal disorder that he had, which caused him to be so huge, was incredibly painful for him in later years.
Yep.
The scene where at the end, where he catches Buttercup, he actually had a brace on him so that he could stand up straight while catching her. So there were several scenes where he was dealing with a lot of pain, but he grinned and he bore it, and he dealt with it every single day and gave, simplicity aside, I thought he gave a great performance.
He gave a very endearing performance, and I don't think that anybody's going to say they don't love what he did in this film. Exactly.
He gave an endearing and earnest performance, and if you don't love it, then you need Jesus in your life.
Let's talk about Inigo. Again, like one of the best lines is in Inigo's mouth, like one of the most quoted. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Like it's just part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Yes.
The character's really simple and straightforward and interesting. I mean, usually I don't find revenge backstories interesting, but the fact that this wasn't the focus of the film made him a really interesting accessory character. The fact that it's his revenge that moves the A plot from point A being dead and point B being not really dead was a fantastic device.
He had a lot of moments of just physicality that if you're watching him in the background, like there's one particular shot on the boat. I think it's when they were approaching the Cliffs of Insanity, and his feet are so far apart. It looks like a Spider-Man pose. And he's just always doing something like that, where his posture, his body language is is conveying his attitude at any given moment.
I wonder if they're using the same wind we are using. Mandy's gone on record. He said that this role of Inigo Montoya has been his favorite throughout his entire career.
It shows.
Yeah.
That's good because it's certainly following him around.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that might be part of what makes some of these characters what they are. There's obviously a lot of joy that goes into this work.
Yeah. We talk about how much we would have enjoyed hearing all of the extra lines and all the extra jokes that hit the cutting room floor when during Billy Crystal's tirade as Miracle Max. But I can't help but imagine that I need to watch, like, Cary Elwes read his book, because I would have loved to have been on this set, because it sounds like they were just really enjoying shooting this movie. I'm back on Andre for a second. In an interview, someone asked him what his favorite thing about the movie was, and Andre replied that nobody looks at me weird. He said that he felt like he was treated as an equal and not as like a sideshow exhibit. No one was looking at him weird because of his size. He was just another member of the cast. And he really loved that. And once again, we talk about intensity. I mean, the final scene, not the final scene, but the culmination of the storyline of Inigo, when he finally encounters the Six-Finger Man, that whole fight. Whenever I watch the movie, I have to rewind it and watch that scene at least twice because of how strong and how emotional it is. And I found out that Mandy Patinkin kind of based his whole revenge story around the fact that he lost his own father to cancer back in the 70s.
Yeah. And what I hear is that when he delivers that line to Count Rugen, I want my father back, what's behind that moment is he's talking to the cancer.
Absolutely. And that when he kills Count Rugen, he said it felt like he had killed the cancer that killed his father. It adds so much more depth and feeling to a scene that was already rife with it. And you're like, this isn't a movie called The Princess Bride. I mean, come on. I wasn't expecting to feel this much.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Count Rugen, but I'm not sure there's a whole lot to talk about. Like Count Rugen has a bigger role in the book, but in both the book and the movie, he doesn't have a particularly large role. I mean, he's there to be the driving force that kills Wesley. He's there to be an agent of Humperdinck. You get a lot more backstory. You get him doing a lot more things in the book, but he's still kind of like he's still Humperdinck's number one in terms of doing the nefarious and evil things that he does. Like, he builds the Zoo of Death. He builds the Pit of Despair. But yeah.
Does the machine appear in the book, or was that made purely for the movie? Okay.
No, the machine is in the book, and it has more suction cups, though. Like even nostril suction cups.
No, I really have to criticize the movie then. We needed more suction cups.
Every movie could do with more suction cups.
Yes.
I mean, right? Especially the nostril kind.
War of the Rohirrim definitely needed more suction cups.
Absolutely.
War of the
World. They were being shipped with the Oliphants, the ones that got lost in the mountains. Or the one Oliphant that got eaten by the extra watcher in the water. That scene I thought was weird. But anyway.
You should see the director's cut of Casablanca with extra suction cups. It's really good, isn't it?
Oh. All right. Well, good night, folks. Thanks for joining us at Geek at Arms. I got nothing after Casablanca with suction cups.
Enough about Rugen, though. What about Humperdinck? What can we say about that character?
What can you say about Humperdinck? I mean, first of all, as you said before, what a name. He's really just exactly as Wesley describes him. I mean, he is just some rich, scabby prince, and he wants one thing, and that's to start a war with Gilder. And as an antagonist, that really works in this film. They do a lot more in the book to make sure that he is less likable of a character, if possible. But I think that he is just the right amount of not likable in the film. In the book, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if the writers for Disney's Beauty and the Beast read the book version and said, "Yep, that's who Gaston needs to be."
I imagine there's a line that you have to just kind of toe, but not quite cross, for making a character unlikable, because you don't want people to be just turned off the movie and say, no, this guy is so bad that I just want to stop seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's his portrayal does a good job there, where it's like he's just nasty enough and just horrible enough that you really want to see him get his comeuppance without being so bad that you're queasy watching him.
And you dislike him from the get-go, and where he hasn't even done anything like quote unquote bad yet.
Mm-hmm.
We get the first glimpse of him at the beginning where he announces, "I am marrying commoner as you, Princess Buttercup." And then we finally really meet him on the hunt. He's talking about the duel, and so far all we know about him is that here's a man looking for his fiancée who's been kidnapped. That's all you know. And yet you just don't like him. Especially when he says things like, "We find them, and if she has come to any harm, I will be very put out. If I am wrong, and I am never wrong, they're heading for the fire." Like, yeah, I don't like you, dude. And he leans into that. He leans into it very well. So, what was that actor's name? Chris Sarandon. Well done. Well done at being thoroughly unlikable.
I think the only other, there are plenty of great characters to delve into, but they're really funny for their moments. I mean, the impressive clergyman, because who hasn't gone to a wedding or officiated one where they've wanted to do marriage? Like,
my uncle refused to do that for my wedding. I take my job very seriously. Oh, that's too bad.
In the rehearsals for my wedding, the minister, when she was giving us the bits on the vows, she was putting like a lot of chunks of vow together at a time. And I kept tripping up while we were doing it. And so in the middle of one of these, I just looked at her and I said, "Man and wife, say man and wife." And we've talked about Miracle Max, who he is, because Billy Crystal had, because he is an amazing comedic actor who has amazing comedic timing and who understood the assignment.
Yes.
Props to their makeup department on the makeup for Miracle Max and Valerie.
Oh, yes.
They did a better job with age than Star Trek The Next Generation ever did.
I want to talk about a quick tertiary character who you only hear his name once. His name is Yellen. He's the chief enforcer of Florin and in charge of the spy network. Very subservient to the prince, but then tries to act very tough around his men. So typical of that role. The reason he's standing out to me is because of the praise I want to give him for his reactions, where they're storming the castle. Fezzik throws the portcullis back up, and Yellen is just wide-eyed in disbelief, as well he should be. He's doing exactly what he should be doing at that moment. And then the heroes are surrounding him. "Give us the gate key." "Oh, I have no gate key." "Fezzik, tear his arms off." "Oh, you mean this gate key." It was a perfectly hilarious scene, and he did it exactly right.
Yeah, he's got good timing in any scene that he's interacting in. Like, even when they're doing just a little gesture of, he comes up to the prince, puts his elbow on the prince's armrest, and the prince just looks at him, and he quickly removes it. I mean, there's no dialogue, but it's good timing. And so, yeah, he understood the assignment.
A very small role, but one that he did very well. Kudos to Yellen.
Channeling the middle manager that we all hate.
Yeah, the grandfather is one that I think that it deserves some mention, because first of all, Peter Falk, in his only big screen role, absolutely beloved actor, and in a pretty straightforward, sincere role. And it's really amazingly different from how this was written in the book, because he wasn't in the book. The replacement figure for this was either the author himself, who's presenting the story for his son, or the grandfather, who is a Florinese immigrant. And, and one of the things that kind of made the Florinese father what he was, they said, you have to have respect for Morgenstern. Morgenstern spoke 8 languages. My father held up all of his fingers. 8 languages. And it's just so many things like this about the father that made him quirky, but I don't think that he would have worked well. He would have just been a gag on screen, and you didn't need a gag for the family story. And so I think this was one of the things that makes this a great adaptation. As I've said before, he knew what to cut, and inventing the grandfather to tell the story to his grandson just seemed to make it.
Well, did we have anything else we wanted to say on the topic of The Princess Bride?
I think I got something. I usually don't tag these in, but I really want to recommend that if you love The Princess Bride, check out Cary Elwes's. It's really kind of his tell-all memoir of the filming behind the scenes of The Princess Bride. And rather than it being one of these scandalous tell-all memoirs, it's really just him gushing about how great these people are. And it's a delightful read. It's engaging. It's funny. It's called As You Wish, Inconceivable Tales from the Making of the Princess Bride. And I can't recommend it more highly if you're just looking for a page-turner.
And on that note, we will head to the Zombie Apocalypse Plan of the Week. Mike, how are we going to see through the end of days this time?
Oh, I've got excellent news. Since the dead are walking, we can conclude that they're just mostly dead. So even though it would take a miracle, I think that we have solid precedent for getting these people back in their right shape.
Oh, we're going to need a lot of chocolate coating.
We're going to need a lot of chocolate, man.
And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you all for listening in. Please check us out online at all the usual places at facebook.com/geekatarms. Mike, where else are we found online?
You can find us at Geek at Arms on Instagram and on Blue Sky, and you can find us as Arms Geek on what's left of Twitter.
Leave us a review, give us a like. It really does help the podcast. And from Brian, Mike, and James, be safe, be blessed, and be geeky.
And have fun storming the castle.
Do you think it'll work?
It'll take a miracle.
Thanks for listening to Geek at Arms. Music for this podcast was provided by Incompetech.com. For more, check us out at Facebook.com/Geek at Arms. Give us a like and maybe even subscribe to us on iTunes. That would be awesome.
Both of my screens went black for a second.
Wiggle your mouse.
You just wiggled your mouse. Doesn't that make you happy?
His sickness, my sinus infection. My screen's going black. You think a little mouse wiggle is going to make me happy? Now, if only we had a film club, that would be something.